I'm Dr. Deepak Chopra, and I'm very honored to be speaking to all of you at the American Academy of Yoga and Meditation Conference, the International Yoga Conference USA. So it's a great privilege and honor to speak to all of you. I've been a practitioner of yoga and meditation for the last 45 years or more, and very diligent in my daily practice of sadhana, as I call it. So what I'd like to share with you today is that there's a tremendous amount of research going on today on what we call self-regulation, homeostasis, and self-healing. This was not a science in the West until a few years ago, because subjective experiences were not measurable. But right now, every experience you have is measurable in the brain, but also through biometrics in the body, including what's happening to your heart rate variability, your immune function, your hormones, homeostasis, inflammation, etc., etc. Today, as we look at what's happening in the world with COVID-19 and the major pandemics, it is becoming very clear that people who have low-grade anxiety, low-grade depression, low-grade inflammation have a predisposition to get sick from chronic illness. In fact, low-grade anxiety, inflammation, and depression precede chronic illness by several decades. And also, people who are getting sick, morbidity and mortality as a result of infections, but other illnesses also, all have this low-grade inflammation. And people who are getting acutely sick also have something called cytokine storms. Their body is flooded with inflammatory proteins. So while the whole world is fixated on stress management and sympathetic overdrive and how meditation can help and alleviate the morbidity and mortality, both from acute and chronic illness, prevention of acute crises and chronic illness, there's a lot of evidence that chronic disease can also be reversed through vagal stimulation. In the West, very little attention has been given to the autonomic nervous system, which counteracts what we call sympathetic overdrive, which is leading to fight, flight, stress, inflammation, and disease. So recently, there's a lot of interest in what is called the polyvagal theory. Just to give you a very little brief glimpse into what the polyvagal theory is, it has to do with the vagus nerve, which is part of our parasympathetic nervous system. The sympathetic nervous system is involved when we are stressed, when we are feeling threatened. We go into what is called fight or flight or freeze. The parasympathetic nervous system has a nerve that is dominant in self-regulation and healing, and that nerve is called the vagus nerve. If you look at the etymology of the vagus nerve, it's related to the English word vagabond, because it goes everywhere. It's the 10th cranial nerve that begins its journey in the midbrain, but it also interacts with your oculomotor nerve, which is responsible for your eye movements. It also interacts with your facial nerve, which is responsible for your facial expressions. It interacts with the laryngeal nerve, which is responsible for the tone of your voice. And then it goes through the diaphragm and it innervates every organ in the body. The hollow organs, which we know, the intestines, small and large, stomach, and so on, but also the solid organs like spleen, kidney, liver. And today we are learning that the vagus nerve is the healing nerve. It's the reset nerve, the self-regulation nerve. And the polyvagal theory involves 4 things that stimulate all the branches of the vagus nerve. And those 4 things are, number 1, breathing. so think pranayam. Posture, think yogasanas. Pratyahara, think interoceptive awareness, what is happening inside the body. And then finally, behavior, emotional and social intelligence and resilience. When we look at the 8 limbs of yoga, this is exactly what is happening when healing is activated. So the yamas and niyamas are principles of social and emotional intelligence. Yogasanas are seats of awareness which stimulate different parts of the vagus nerve for healing. Every part of the vagus nerve. Even a simple thing like Surya Namaskar will stimulate different parts of the vagus nerve for healing. But a yoga routine does that automatically. That's why we call these asanas, yogasanas, we call them seats of awareness. So yama, niyama, yogasana, pranayam. Pratyahara is going inward, interoceptive awareness, and the ability to regulate, self-regulate what's happening in the body. And then, of course, we have dharana, focused awareness, dhyan, and samadhi. This is the entire yoga routine. If you look at any textbook of yoga, look at the original writings of Patanjali, this is the sequence. And what we're seeing in the sequence is every aspect of self-regulation, homeostasis, and healing. Our research currently shows that the practice of yoga in its totality is actually the most effective way to decrease inflammation, to override sympathetic overdrive, and to bring about the healing process through what is called homeostasis or self-regulation. So this is the research we are doing at the Chopra Foundation in collaboration with many other institutions, including scientists at Harvard and UCSF. We're working with Nobel laureates and other scientists, and our data clearly shows that with the practice of yoga in its totality, we can actually change the activity of our genes. So all the genes that are responsible for self-regulation, they go up significantly, some 17-fold. All the genes that are responsible for inflammation or diseases like cardiovascular disease, Alzheimer's, cancer, autoimmune illness, frequent infections, they go down significantly. The level of the enzyme telomerase, which is responsible for the length of telomeres, which are like little buttons at the end of our chromosomes, the practice of meditation, yoga increases the level of telomerase. There's no drug that does that, meaning that yoga, meditation, pranayam, pratyahara, social and emotional intelligence, every aspect of yoga is actually changing the activity of your genetic clock for aging. So not only is yoga useful for longevity, but also for lifespan and health span, not only how long you live, but how healthy you live. If you practice yoga diligently with its total understanding, you can slow down the aging process. You can even reverse it for a while, and ideally speaking, avoid any chronic illness as you grow older and transition to non-local awareness or self-realization through Mahasamadhi. That's a big promise, and only yoga can fulfill that promise. But we must understand yoga in its totality, as Patanjali says, Yog Chit Vritti Nirodh. Yoga is the progressive quietening of the vrittis of consciousness that appear as sensations, sense perceptions, emotions, feelings, thoughts, and images. As we quieten the activity of the conditioned mind and we go to the source of the mind, which is pure consciousness, then we are holy and then we are healed. So once again, wonderful conference, a month-long exploration into healing and enlightenment and liberation and self-realization. I'm very privileged to be part of this great conversation that's going to be happening, and will be happy to share more research with you as we continue exploring everything that we can about healing the body-mind through self-awareness. Thank you very much. God bless and all the best.